Well, the Energy Department has confirmed business and consumers' greatest fears. Fuel prices are going up on Wednesday, and for farmers and the agricultural sector, this means consumers will be paying more for food. We are joined by agricultural economist at FNB, Paul Makube, to talk more about this particular increases. Paul, thank you very much for your time. There has been a huge concern about the runaway fuel prices on all sectors, but particularly the agricultural sector is one where a lot of people are looking at what's going to do, particularly to grain producers and those who are in the logistics space in the agricultural value chain. Let's talk about what farmers are going through and what they'll be considering when it comes to this latest round of fuel price hikes.
Good evening, and thanks for having me, Kolani. Yes, definitely. If you talk about the grain sector, two things. We are currently in the final stages of our harvests, and in the winter grain areas, they've just almost finished their planting, and that's increased activity in terms of the agricultural calendar. Now that requires movement of produce from farms to the silos, and also movement of produce from the storage areas to for the export markets. So that involves huge consumption of fuel, and a further increase in fuel prices will actually have an impact on margins for those farmers. And as you may recall, that while farmers can absorb this cost at the moment, they have got a difficulty in terms of passing on this cost to the to the consumer. They are price takers, and therefore have that limited ability to pass on costs, and therefore this is also always passed on to the to the farmer.
Paul, there is a huge concern right now in the agricultural sector that if these fuel price increases continue to October, beyond October, which is likely the case, this is going to eat into their profitability as a sector, and therefore they will have no choice but to pass on those costs to consumers.
In fact, it's a double whammy for the producers. One is that the inflationary pressures from the input cost side means they need to get more funds for operations into the next season. But that also comes at the cost. Interest rates are on a huge upward trajectory, which means that it becomes increasingly difficult to actually source funding and those environments if we have a further escalation in fuel costs. So going into the next season, it will be those farmers that have sufficient buffers to actually continue with the operations, and definitely that will force farmers to start either innovating or in order to improve their efficiencies, and that might include technologies, or also switching to alternative crops that are not heavily fuel heavy. But they've got limitations in terms of that, given the nature of agriculture, the biological nature of operations. You don't just switch from grain to livestock. It's a long-term thing to do unless you sell your farm. So that has implications going forward in terms of the next season, planting season for the summer grains and oilseeds.
You just referred to this as a double whammy for farmers out there, and I put it to you that it's a triple whammy, if I can call it that, because not only are they contending with the rise in the prices of fertilizer globally, but locally they are having to deal with stage 6 load shedding and these blackouts. This does not put them in a good footing, particularly when you consider that most of them are highly indebted?
Definitely. The load shedding that we're experiencing at the moment, quite a concern for the farming community, and that comes at the time when support in terms of municipal support, where the agribusinesses are operating, in the hinterland, has been relatively weak. You've got the road you've got the road infrastructure that is in a bad shape, which means when you plan your route to the market, either livestock or fruit, you have to look. You have to choose the better routes, which might take it even longer than usual, which means increased cost on the consumer. Otherwise, you have to contend with bad roads that will actually damage your vehicles and also time to delivery. So yes, I agree with you that is an added cost for the farmers in the current environment.
So if this continues any longer, the high rate of increases in fuel prices, the load shedding and the blackouts, a lot of people will say that we should be worried, or should we be worried about food insecurity in the country when it comes to the agricultural sector?
At the moment, actually, we're lucky in South Africa in the sense that the excellent seasonal conditions in the past 2 years ensured that we have sufficient, supplies, that the farmers have responded and produced more. It's not a question of availability at the moment; it's a question of price. But the implications of pressures on farmers with limited ability to actually pass on costs means that you might have a second round effect of contraction in output, and which might create that situation that you're talking about in the next few seasons to come. For now, we are sufficiently supplied. The question is at what price are you going to get it, and that is the inflationary pressure that we're seeing at the moment, with consumers quite cash strapped at the moment, which might impact on demand as well.
I want to put you on the spot. In a couple of weeks' time, we will hear from the central bank, and we've already heard from the Reserve Bank governor reports saying that he is even seeing a 50 basis point hike. Other economists are saying even a 75 basis point hike. That is another huge challenge for the sector as well, these interest rate increases.
Yeah, so you've just talked about the load shedding, which is actually constraining growth. It's going to hurt our growth in this year. Inflation has breached the Reserve Bank target, upper end of the Reserve Bank's target of 3 to 6%, at 6.5%. And therefore, definitely 50 basis points are in the offing, currently. The 75 points is quite steep in the, constrained economic growth situation. But 50 basis points definitely is what we were likely to see. And that is also on the back of the situation on the global market, with aggressive hiking by central banks, but also inflationary pressures that are still building up on the international market. Unfortunately, with the fuel situation, it's an external factor, the war situation. But I mean, before the war, we have seen during COVID the upswing in crude oil prices, and we are net importer of that commodity, and therefore we will be subject to the situation on the international market. There can be some intervention that has been there by government, but there is limitation as to what they can do further, given that your major determinants are actually externally driven.
Paul Makube, that's all the time we have tonight. He is the agricultural economist at F&B. Certainly not only the agricultural sector feeling the pinch of the latest round of fuel price hikes, but it's also the secondary impact on consumers as well, where we are likely to see those food increases.